Hello, 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 hello. We have our first Facebook Live with Shannon-Ohara. I'm so excited.
Woohoo! Hi, everybody.
So I'm excited. So Shannon, what is talk to the entities? If somebody doesn't know the modalities, what it is, where it does come from, and so what can you say about that? If nobody knows anything about it.
So Talk to the Entities is an access consciousness specialty class that I created over the last decade, maybe more like 15 years, out of pure desperation, being super aware of ghosts myself. And Gary Douglas, who's the creator and founder of Access, is my stepdad, and he raised me. So I was really fortunate to be sort of exposed to Access really early on, and something that we talk about and Talk to the Entities is awareness, and how many of you guys are aware of ghosts in all the ways that you are, and no one's ever really talked to you about it. No one's really empowered you around it. Are there many tools that you were ever given for how to handle that? And the cool thing that so few people realize is that there's really dynamic, effective, extremely simple ways of dealing with the spirit world that change and facilitate energy and improve all of our lives for the embodied and disembodied very dynamically. And so Talk to the Entities is a compilation of those tools, those processes, those philosophies, and those different ways of looking at the world that are really the how-to survivalist kit and really enthusiastic expansion of consciousness around the world and subject of the spirit world.
Cool. So, and if somebody says like, I'm afraid of ghosts, what is your answer?
Yeah, well, I mean, we all know what it's like to be afraid of ghosts. I mean, I'm even staying in a house right now, funnily enough, in Sydney, in one of the oldest neighborhoods in Sydney, and you wouldn't really expect it. None of us really expect to run into a haunted house. We're sort of, when we do, we're like, ugh. And this house has been really active. And I've been clearing and using all the tools, and to no avail. And at nighttime, like, I don't really want to go upstairs by myself. Like, there's a lot going on up there. But I was in the kitchen yesterday, and I was sort of like, why isn't this working? Why isn't this working? Because, you know, with in Talk to the Entities, we have really dynamic clearing tools, and they're usually very effective, especially for me. So I was, you know, I really applied those tools, and I wasn't getting the shift that really worked for me, or that was effective. And so I kept being in the question of, okay, so what's right about this I'm not getting, and what else needs to happen here? And finally it clicked for me yesterday that really what's actually occurring here is time's bleeding. Mm-hmm. And you don't really expect for time to bleed in a new world country, but where I am is literally where the neighborhood that I'm staying is the first European settlement that they created in Sydney. And there's just a lot going on here. And so as soon as I had that awareness of time bleeding, meaning times, we're not just right here, there are certain places in the world where when you go there, time bleeds. Places like Jerusalem, Rome, Paris.
Time bleeds.
Yeah, time bleeding. It's when you actually have access to all time, especially the past of any particular area. Now, that doesn't happen everywhere, but it does happen in some places. And so what I was perceiving as entities was actually time bleeding. And as soon as I realized that, it was a lot easier for me to recognize what I was picking up on. Mm-hmm. So now that I've deviated quite far from the entity topic, you know, it's like with the fear thing, most of us are not given any tools or resources for actually working with or dealing with our own awarenesses, let alone clearing entities, communicating with entities, recognizing awareness of entities. And let's face it, we're taught a lot of life skills from our parents. And if our parents have the point of view of being afraid of ghosts or anything in life, we will tend to duplicate that. Now, fear is a great way of rejecting awareness. And in Access, we talk about fear being a distractor implant that's designed to distract you from what you're aware of. And so really the cool sort of tool number one of Talk to the Entities is when you have fear coming up, since there's actually really no way of handling fear, it's like, how many of you guys have had fear coming up and we're never really able to handle it, yet it was completely controlling of you. And so you have to destroy and uncreate the distractor implants of fear. around entities. Right, wrong, good, bad, all nine, PUD, PUC, shorts, boys, meons. So that's the access consciousness clearing statement. That's sort of like the magic delete button that we can use to shift the energy deeply, dynamically. We're not going to explain that right now. If you want more information about the clearing statement, where can they go for that, Simone?
Post it afterwards, after the video.
Oh, cool. There's many resources for you to learn about that clearing statement. So with fear, you know, it's like, and how many of you guys have had fear, do have fear in regards to the spirit world? That's a very common phenomenon. Well, wouldn't you be surprised to know that fear is actually a distractor implant? It's not real, and it's actually preventing you. It's a justification, basically, for not being aware of what you're aware of.
And I have another question. Like, oftentimes children are aware of entities, of ghosts, of something, and parents are not believing. Or do you have a recommendation for that? If your children like, oh, I see this, or whatever. Perhaps sometimes it's not even fear. Sometimes they say also fairies, or like they are connected to the spirit world more than the adults oftentimes, aren't they?
Yeah, you know, as children, we haven't quite learned to be real and take life seriously. And so there tends to be a lot more openness and awareness, which the good news is the more access you do, the more you access what you're aware of as a child too. So you gain that sort of back. But for any of you guys that are parents that have aware children, it's like, that's actually kind of a big conversation, because it also, that's a sort of an entity awareness conversation kind of coupled with a relationship parenting conversation, which is a massive topic, obviously. So with any of you guys that have kids that are aware, it's like you want to look at, okay, so what am I going to have to be in order to allow my children to be aware? Is there anything I need to change? Is there anywhere I can be empowering them? And what can I learn from my children about awareness? And what would it take to discover and explore awareness together? And of course, I can hear in a lot of your guys' heads like, oh my God, scary, 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 too much, overwhelming. And that's really where Talk to the Entities comes into play, because it's really actually not scary and overwhelming once you have the right tools and resources to traverse that landscape. And so that's what Simone and I are here to share with everyone today, as a taste of the energy of possibility. And please recognize that there is, I mean, Talk to the Entities is a class. It's a book, it's a class, it's classes, it's facilitated worldwide. There's over 75 Talk to the Entities facilitators, in so many different languages, going on all over the planet all the time. And so if you desire to learn these tools, learn these processes, it's only a choice away.
Yeah, and the cool thing is you have a telecall coming up as well. Like, as you say, there's so much to say about, and sometimes 5 or 10 minutes are not enough to just cover everything. It's just like there's so many areas. So in what more areas? I mean, with children, you can have more ease. What else is? What can entities of the class contribute to people's life?
Yeah, so just as an introduction to Talk to the Entities, it's to sort of recognize, like, I'm starting this conversation from the preface of, okay, we're dealing with entities. We're dealing with spirits in the world. So I'm not here to convince you that you're aware of ghosts. I'm here to talk to those of you guys that are like, okay, I've been super aware of entities, and what do I do now? And it's this thing where it's like, I was one of those kids that saw, you know, flashing, sparkling lights everywhere, and heard voices, and was having conversations with people who weren't there. And as I grew up, I started to get that was abnormal. And I went in, and as a teenager, I really tried to turn it off, because I didn't want to be that weird and that different. And I turned to drugs, and I tried to turn it off. And what actually is interesting about awareness in general, and especially entity awareness, is that you can't make awareness go away. You can only go unconscious to it. And so you know, how many of you guys have tried to reject or resist or not be aware of what you're aware of? And what are the side effects of that? And so a lot of the side effects for me of not wanting to be aware, especially of ghosts, was that turns into, that awareness has to go somewhere. And it turned it, for me, into severe depression, extreme anger, my body didn't feel good, so on and so on. And this is where a lot of the psychological disorders that people suffer from come from, is the resistance or misunderstanding of awareness. And so I was acutely aware of entities, and I still am. And as a teenager, it almost killed me. And I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm just being clear in that there is this incredible possibility for awareness that so few of us are truly empowered and educated in. And unfortunately, entity awareness, and when we're uneducated and when we are aware of entities, it can have side effects of depression, multiple personality, a lot of psychological diagnoses, and then also physiological results. We can have a lot of stuff showing up in our body that's actually awareness of entities. And is being aware of entities bad?
No.
So everywhere that you guys bought that being aware of ghosts, spirits, talking to the voices in your head was evil, wrong, bad, creepy, disgusting, freakish, everything that is, and everything that you guys bought about that or sold and perpetrated in any lifetime, will y'all revoke, recant, rescind, renounce, denounce, destroy, and create it, please? Right, wrong, good, bad, all nine, pod, poc, shorts, boys, and beyonds. And everything that you bought in any lifetime about what it means to be aware of ghosts, whether it's good or bad, will you guys revoke, recant, rescind, renounce, denounce, destroy, and uncreate all of this, please? Right and wrong, good and bad, all nine, pod, poc, shorts, boys, and beyonds. And so I went through a lot of that because there's a lot of stuff about that in our societies. It's not, being aware of ghosts isn't just like, oh, cool, it's just like smelling the flowers or feeling the sunshine. It's this other phenomenon that can be very highly judged and very misunderstood. So as a teenager, it almost killed me. And I got to this point where I wanted to die, and I was very close to that. And this is when Access stepped into my life. And my dad sort of tricked me into getting my bars run, which is the very foundation of Access. And I sort of didn't really want to do it because it was the weird stuff my dad did, but I had to do something because I was suffering so badly. And so I started getting my bars run a little bit. And then like he'd have these conversations with me on the phone where he was actually like kind of processing me, but I didn't really know what he was doing. And then I'd hang up the phone and I'd like feel universes better than where I started. And finally I was like, wow, I'm actually I don't want to die anymore. And so that was this massive like, oh, okay, so these Access is doing something and it's really improving my quality of life. And so I started choosing more Access. And what occurred from that is all of the resistances, all the blocks, all the stops that I had put in place to stop the spirit world, my awareness of the spirit world went away. And it was like one day I was home in my apartment in Southern California, tiny little apartment. The room filled up with so many entities that I literally couldn't see the other side of the room. And I knew it was ghosts, and it freaked me out. And I called my dad and I'm like, oh my God, my house is full of ghosts. It's so terrible. And he's like, that's awesome, hun. I was like, this is not awesome. This is freaking me out. And I slammed the door shut. And the next, several months, my whole life just like deteriorated to the point of like my body hurt. I couldn't make any money. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I was like miserable. I was like, wow. And then I was out at my dad's house one night for dinner, complaining about my horrible life. And he's like, well, what did you refuse to do? And I got right then that I had refused to talk to the entities. And I saw how resisting that ability was detrimental to my whole life. And I made a choice that night. Okay, whatever this looks like, whatever this takes, I will find out. And here we are today, sort of like 15, 16 years later, and here we have Talk to the Entities.
Wow. It's really a wow. I mean, so many people receive so much change from it and so much more clarity and ease as well. I mean, there's so much in, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd like to, and thank you, Simone, for letting me talk so much. I'd love to also just address sort of the logistics of Talk to the Entities, in that to bring this out of the sort of the confusing and into the clear with entities. Really, in Talk to the Entities, we're basically going over 3 and only 3 things about ghosts. There's really only 3 things you ever do with spirits, weirdly enough. You clear them, communicate with them, and receive from them. And that's it. That's like the magic formula. And with those 3 actions under your belt, when you know how to do those or recognize which one of those is required, you become this extremely capable facilitator of the spirit world that will be changing the world with every moment you choose to be you and be aware, and receiving this magical gift that's around us all the time that so few people are willing to have, that if you will have it, is this sort of magical golden hug and sparkling super treasure of consciousness that is available. And that's really and that's sort of obviously more in the advanced Talk to the Entities classes, because that's where receiving really comes into play. But in the beginning, which is the telecall that Simone mentioned that I'm going to be starting in a couple of weeks, it's the beginning class. And this is where we do a lot of clearing about what you bought about entities, everything that was projected at you about it. And then we'll start to actually learn how to work with them in terms of clearing and communicating. And just in those, I mean, the feedback that I've gotten from people, like, oh my God, just with applying those to their lives, it's not just changed their lives, it's like revolutionized their entire reality. So no longer do you need to be at the effect of the shadows lurking in the corners, you know, or that voice that you've been hearing all your life that you think you're crazy. You know, you can actually turn towards these awarenesses and open up to a whole new world of possibility.
This is so cool. I mean, and what is this about? Like, if you have shut that door, like, I don't like to have that awareness anymore. Like, I'm not able to see them. Like, they're also like,
well, I'm not really here to convince anybody to choose. That's really their choice. And look, you got to be ready. And like,
no, I mean, if you have like, you had the awareness as a child and then you shut the door, is there a possibility to have that again? That is the question. Not like that they should choose. Like, if you're curious about, am I able to open that door again? And
I guess that is the question. Are they able to open that door again? That's their choice. That's really their choice. And I have a lot of people, it's hysterical. I've known a lot of people on Access for many years who like never talk to me and who sort of look at me sideways. And I used to think that they didn't like me. And then what I discovered was it was actually that they didn't want to be aware of entities. And they somehow thought that looking me in the eyes meant that they were going to sort of open up to the awareness of entities. And I've had a lot of people actually approach me recently, weirdly, saying, you know what, I just did my first Talk to Entities class, and thank you so much. I never wanted to talk to you before, and now I'm so willing to have these awarenesses. So it's so different for everybody. And really, whether or not you open up to your awareness, of course, is everyone's individual choice. And what would your life be like if you lived in a world of awareness? And are you even aware of what you're doing or choosing to eliminate awareness? And sort of the interesting part for me, and one of the real impetuses or inspirations for facilitating more, and what I've seen so dynamically with Talk to the Entities, is that you don't just cut off awareness. When you cut off awareness, you actually, in essence, cut off and lose a part and piece of yourself. And so in order to not be aware of all the entities, there are massive parts and pieces of you that you do not have access to. And so what starts occurring is when you do open that door or say yes to awareness at all of anything, not just entities, but of anything, you start gaining more of you again. And that's really the part that feels so good. You're like, oh my God, I feel so much better. Oh.
That's so cool. Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. So is there more? Like, when are the dates? 16th of January. I have not remembered that the beginner call starts, and then you have the facilitator training. They're also like, I'm not sure how many people are watching right now.
Yeah. I mean, if you guys want to jump into the stream of Talk to Entities, there are classes all over the place. I mean, I've got the telecall, and thank you, Simone, for voicing that to everyone. I've got this telecall starting on the 16th, but just we'll put a link for you guys to view it. But there's also other Talk to Entities facilitators facilitating, probably even in your language, right now somewhere in the world. There's people, they're all the time doing amazing things. And of course, I'd love for you guys to join me. I'm doing the advanced Talk to the Entities this year twice, once in Brazil and once in Paris. Both are going to be live streamed. meaning you can come join us live, and I hope you do, or you can watch on your computer and be part of the class that way. Yep, and we've got facilitators coming up. It's pretty exciting. Every year facilitators grows and grows, and it sort of blows my mind that, you know, I started out as this like totally fucked up, you know, teenager going, oh, fuck, I don't want to be a freak. And it sort of was this my making the choice to know what I know and to talk about what I'm aware of became this great inspiration for others to get out of the wrongness of their awareness and into the ease of consciousness, which is really what Access is all about, getting us to have an easy life that's conscious and full of awareness, although it might not be normal.
Cool. Thank you so much, Shannon. I'm excited. Like, what else is there? Like, for me, the entity is bringing me so much in the question, and I love it. Yeah, it's like there is not really an answer. It's like more following the energy and.
Cool. And thank you for your inspiration, Simone, and your enthusiasm. And I get that a lot of people, some of you guys are excited, some of you guys are daunted, some of you guys are totally clueless about what you want to choose, and some of you guys know that you want to move forward. And wherever you're at, like, please know that is now the time for change, and is living from fear or inability in regards to your awareness working for you anymore. So will you please learn these tools, apply these tools, and get to work with changing your world, the world, by facilitating, clearing entities, communicating, and best of all, receiving. Thank you guys all so much for being here. We look forward to playing with you wherever we get to see you in the world. How does it get better than this?
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys. Bye, guys. Bye.